I once had a speech teacher that told me that it was easier to talk to 400 people you didn't know than 20 you did. And that is definitely a true story. First of all, you need to know this is not a sermon. I am not a theologian. I'm not even a very good student of the Bible. I know I should be. I'm being honest when I say most of my familiar Bible passages come from Bible school when I was a kid. And now Facebook. I really love the stuff they put on Facebook sometimes. And I have an extensive collection of these references now on my phone. Be still and know that I am God. I'm a Christian who learns the best not from merely the words of the scripture, but from a relatable personal story which binds the words and the actions together. I think it's more important now than ever. We want to hear our speakers tell us a story from the Bible that is relevant. I've been struggling with what to call this. Is it a testimony about faith? A lesson about belief? I'm just going to call it my own personal story. This is how God changed me. I don't think it'll be relevant unless you understand the circumstances that created that. In 2018, it's 2018, and I'm sitting in a Denver hospital again, surrounded by strangers, listening to doctors give me news I do not want to hear. My husband Greg's keratin numbers, which are the numbers that tell the doctor about kidney function, are continuing to rise. Greg is despondent. It's almost impossible to have a conversation with him. There is no fire behind his eyes, no fight in his voice. And since the first time since his accident, I felt hopeless. I have never felt more alone in my life. We had a minister that came in later that afternoon, and she asked Greg if he would like to talk to her, and he just kind of shooed her away. And then she looked at me, and all the frustration and fear must have shown on my face. "Would you like to step outside?" she said. I followed her out and sat side by side on a little bench outside of Greg's door. "Are you okay?" That was the first time anyone had asked me that in a long time. I honestly couldn't talk, and it took me a few minutes to compose myself. "Not really. It's been very hard. It's a long story," I said. She looked at me and said, "Just give me what you want." So I spent the next 30 to 45 minutes telling her the story of how Greg and I had come to be there. The story of Greg severely breaking his leg in 2016 from tipping over a track hoe. A break that did not want to heal. An ugly compound fracture. Now, 2 years and 15 surgeries later, the large amount of antibiotics seemed to be affecting his kidneys. I went on to tell her that we ranched in Wyoming and told her a little bit about our family. We had 4 kids, 1 in high school, 2 in college, and 1 at home trying to help on the ranch. Then I told her about his last surgery. She looked at me. "And you?" The baldness always gave it away. I'd been diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017. I'd finished my chemotherapy and was actually sitting in the doctor's office for my first radiation treatment when they called to say they were life-flighting Greg to Denver. She asked me if I wanted to pray, and I said yes. And we sat in the hallway and prayed together. I need to tell you that that is not like me. I have always been a very private Christian. That whole situation would have made me so uncomfortable months earlier that I would have turned her down. Not that I didn't pray. I had always had prayers for God. You know, your usual prayers at the end of the day. Thank you for the day. Please bless everyone that needs it. You know, please bless my family. Maybe a few personal navigational questions. I had a lot to ask God, but I very seldom ever did it publicly. I was not someone who usually asked for personal help. There had actually been 4 times in my life when my prayers were desperate. When my father died, when Greg broke his leg the first time, the second surgery in Denver where they re-broke that leg, realigned that leg, and reset that leg. Then the last surgery. The last surgery, they had cut 4 inches out of a bone that was infected. 4 inches. That's a lot. Then they took an external asphyxiator, which is 2 big round pieces, one above and one below, and they put big screws in his leg. It's like an erector set, if you know what an erector set looks like. And every day we would turn the screws and it would re-break his leg. Because what they want to do is they want that little bit to grow, just get grown, and they want to break it again so it grows again. And yes, it is absolutely as ugly as it sounds. At these times, I had prayed to God to ease his pain because after his surgeries, his pain was heartbreaking. I had prayed to God that our challenge would end. I'd prayed to God that Greg's leg would heal. It didn't happen. I was frustrated, but I had not given up on God. I just decided that he had a lot going on and figured, after all, we were a tough bunch. We didn't usually say prayers like we probably should have. We took care of ourselves. He must be answering prayers for people who needed prayers answered more than we did. The day after the minister visited with me, I walked down to the chaplain's office in the hospital. I wanted to tell the minister how much I had appreciated her comfort and her words. No one was there, but there was a note on the door that reminded everyone that the chapel was open. Although Greg and I had spent many, many hours in that hospital, I had never gone to the chapel until that day. It was a small room just off the main entrance of the huge building that is the Anschutz Hospital. It was quiet, but if you really listened, you could hear people as they continually passed by the other side of the wall, coming in and out of the hospital. It was simple but comfortable. There were cues in the back, candles burning in the front, and the lights were turned down low. I was the only person in the room. I sat down and I prayed and I cried and I cried and I prayed until I felt that I could do it no more. Then I got up and walked the halls of the hospital, a routine I had honed after hours of being bedside in hospital rooms. The next day I went to the chapel again. Greg's numbers were getting worse. The doctors seemed to be at an impasse about what to do. One wanted to do this, one wanted to do that. It was a teaching hospital. It was frustrating. The visits to the chapel became a routine for me. Each day praying, crying, sometimes getting a little bit angry. I never once went to the chapel when I wasn't the only one there. That was a gift I only understood later. The end of the week came and Greg's numbers were very bad. We had taken him outside that morning and it was just as if he didn't even know where he was. They had talked to him about maybe him needing dialysis. This news was not met well. He was mad. He was angry. I went to the chapel again, and this time I was so tired and I was angry. I honestly didn't even have the energy to cry or pray. I managed pretty much to just ask for some help, and I just sat there. Then something changed. Suddenly, the chapel became totally silent. There was not a sound. Then I heard something. Although you need to understand, it was not through the air, but actually through me. Maybe a better description would be, I felt a voice. A voice that I knew was God. a voice that said, "It will be all right." I cannot to this day explain it. It didn't frighten me. It didn't even really surprise me. Some may claim exhaustion, but I knew when I came out of that chapel that God had spoken to me. He did not tell me that Greg would survive. He did not tell me that Greg's leg would heal. All he said was that everything was going to be all right, and I knew it would be. Those few words took away my fear and gave me the courage to tell the doctors that they just needed to quit waiting and do something. They did. They put Greg on dialysis, and one time changed everything. Every day, his numbers were better. The life returned to his eyes, his brain cleared, and after a time, he was able to go home. In researching the topic of God, of hearing God, I found a sermon that I found very interesting and I enjoyed. It was done by Pastor Joe Whitwer from the Life Center Church. He talks about 4 reasons why we don't hear God. Number 1, we don't expect him to speak. And I can tell you from my own point of view that that is absolutely a truth. Some churches don't even believe that God will talk to people. Our society is pretty uncomfortable when someone says they're speaking with God. Let's be real. You might receive ridicule and even some mental health questions. In the past, perhaps people were more open to the voice of God. That reminded me of a story from our own family. My great-great-grandfather's name was Dobbin Penman, and he worked in the mines in Hanna, Wyoming. He started in the mines when he was 8 years old as a canary carrier. Those were the boys that carried around the canaries, and if the canary died, you knew everybody better get out of the mines. When he was older, he was working in the mines, and the mine groups would sit together in small areas of the mines to have their lunch. And one day he was sitting with his friends, and probably relatives, having their lunch, and he heard someone say, "Get up and move." And he ignored it. But then the voice said, more loudly, "Get up and move." And so he did. He and his little bunch got up and moved to another spot. Before lunch was over, the ceiling collapsed where they had been sitting. So maybe I should have been prepared to hear the voice of God. The second thing that he talks about is we aren't listening. Most of us are lousy listeners. I know I have a tendency to be that way myself. I've always been completely comfortable in silence with myself. Driving down the road, I don't need to have a radio on. Maybe I'm in the house and I don't need to have the TV on. But if I'm in a conversation and there is silence, I am uncomfortable. I am not doing my job as a communicator. I need to get that person to chat with me. I begin to ramble. I start to fill in the blanks. I used to pray that same way when things were dire. That was my mindset. Talk to God, talk to God, talk to God, talk to God. Number 3, we don't know what to listen for. Like someone in the forest for the first time, you may not recognize what you're hearing. God may speak to you in your own voice. Don't expect thunder, don't expect lightning, and don't expect the voice of Charlton Heston. It may be the voice of a stranger. It may be the voice of a friend. It may be a voice when you're standing in line at the grocery store. Have you ever seen a movie or heard a radio song that spoke to you at exactly the time you needed to hear whatever those words were? That could be the voice of God. It may be in total silence. That's how it happened to me. It's still a miracle to me. Number 4, we do not want to hear what God is saying. The news may be bad or uncomfortable, so we just ignore it. It might be something about ourselves we don't want to hear. Perhaps it's that little voice at the back of your head that says, you need to do this, and you don't want to, so you just keep setting it aside. How do we know that we're hearing from God? Well, according to Pastor Whitwer, God would never ask you to do something that was immoral. God would never ask you to do something that goes against the scriptures. He tells the story of a couple from his church that ran away together, not with their own spouses. They had decided that God had spoke to them and they were supposed to leave and start a church. Needless to say, when he found them and spoke to them, he reminded them God would never ask them to do that. The other one is you should ask people and go through the community test. That's kind of what this is for me. It's when you tell someone what God has told you and then kind of see their reaction to it. Do they look at you with a blank stare? Do they think you're crazy? Do they believe that you heard God? All I know is that this is the first time I've ever really told a group of people. It is not a story I have shared with many. I did tell people I found the courage to tell the doctors what I thought they should do. I did not necessarily say that God gave me the courage to do that. How do you explain to someone that you heard God? Hey, mental institutes are full of people that hear God. I was raised in a family who truly believed in God. We were grateful for all we had been given. No one ever thought twice about seeing God in something, the reflection of God, feeling his presence. But other than the story of my great-great-grandfather, I don't ever remember anybody saying they heard the voice of God. I'm not someone who believed in that either. I always believed that I could talk to him, but he couldn't talk to me. And perhaps God had been trying to talk to me during all those times with Greg's, but I was so busy talking, that he didn't even have the opportunity to speak back. I'm a better Christian because of what I went through. I've learned it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to publicly, if somebody says, do you want to say a prayer with me? It's okay to do that. I would have not wanted to do that before. I've also learned that praying is very important, but listening is also part of what God wants us to do. The Bible often mentions listening. Sometimes it's referred to as hear or hearken. It is present in the Bible 265 times. Why are we surprised then when people say they've heard the voice of God? James 19 says, "Be quick to listen and slow to speak." That's one I really need to work on. Matthew 11:15, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear." Isaiah 42:20, "You have seen many things, but do not pay attention. Your ears are open, but they do not listen." Probably the one that means the most to me is Jeremiah 7:13. "And while you were doing all these things, declares the Lord, I spoke to you again and again, but you did not answer. I called, but you did not answer." Hearing is the first sense we develop in the womb and the last to leave us in our death. It only makes sense that God would use every second to tell us that he is here. I want to thank Jerry and everyone who stands up here every week and imparts words of faith to our sleepy little group. To do it well and consistently is a challenge. Thank you. And I am going to try to be a better listener.